The message arrived on a cold Tuesday morning in Geneva. Ambassador Jiwan read it 3 times before she believed what it said. The Galactic Council was sending 40,000 refugees to Earth. They were coming in 2 days. The refugees were called Talviks. They came from a star system that had been destroyed by war. Their planet was gone. Their homes were ash. Everything they knew had burned in nuclear fire and plasma bombs. Now they needed somewhere to go, and the Council had chosen Earth. G1 looked at the attached files. The Council had sent detailed instructions. They called them standard refugee protocols. The plans showed fenced camps with guard towers. There were diagrams for food distribution centers and quarantine zones. Everything was marked with measurements and security specifications. "They want us to build prisons," said Colonel Minho. He stood behind Giwan, reading over her shoulder. His face was hard and angry. Guan nodded slowly. She scrolled through page after page of regulations. Maximum occupancy per shelter unit. Minimum caloric intake. Required security personnel ratios. It was all very precise and very cold. "This is how they do things," Minho continued. 73 planets in the Council. All of them handle refugees the same way. Lock them up. Feed them barely enough to survive. Keep them separated from the regular population. Giwan stood up and walked to the window. Outside the city of Geneva stretched toward the mountains. People walked the streets freely. They went to work and school and cafes. They lived their lives without fences or guard towers. How many times have humans been refugees? Guan asked quietly. Mina thought for a moment. Throughout history, millions of times. Wars, famines, disasters. People always running from something. And when we built camps for refugees, how did that work out? Minho was silent. They both knew the answer. History was full of camps. Some were better than others, but none of them were good. Desperate people behind fences never ended well. G1 turned around. "Get me the Secretary General. And contact every major nation. I want emergency meetings scheduled within the hour." "What are you planning?" Minho asked. "We're going to ignore these protocols," Juan said. "All of them." The news spread fast. Within hours, every government on Earth knew about the incoming refugees. The United Nations called emergency sessions. Military bases went on alert. Scientists scrambled to learn everything they could about Talvik biology. But something unexpected happened. Before the governments could finish their plans, the people started moving. In Busan, a construction manager named Haeon heard about the refugees on the morning news. He was eating breakfast with his wife when he saw the Council's camp designs flash across the screen. Chain-link fences, concrete barracks, armed guards. Haeon put down his coffee. He owned a construction company. He had crews and equipment and connections. He made 3 phone calls. By noon, he had permits to convert an abandoned university campus into apartment buildings. "We're not building cages for people who've lost everything," he told his workers. "We're building homes." In Seoul, Dr. Yoonji worked in a xenobiology research lab. She was one of only 50 humans who had studied alien life forms. When she heard about the Talviks, she immediately requested all available data from the Council. The information was sparse. Talviks were insectoid. They had 4 arms and compound eyes. They breathed oxygen but needed higher humidity than humans. Their young required specific temperature ranges to develop properly. Yoonji started making lists. Humidifiers for nurseries. Full-spectrum lighting that wouldn't hurt their sensitive eyes. Dietary supplements because Earth food might not have all the nutrients they needed. She worked for 18 hours straight. "We need to understand them," she told her research team. "Not as specimens. As people who will be living here, around the world," similar scenes played out. In New York, volunteers cleaned and prepared a closed hospital building. In Nairobi, teachers developed lesson plans for Talvik children. In Sao Paulo, doctors studied xenomedicine protocols. Nobody waited for government orders. Nobody asked permission. They just started working. 2 days later, Counselor Thakvan arrived on Earth. He was the Galactic Council's refugee commissioner. His job was to make sure Earth followed the standard protocols. He had done this work for 200 years on dozens of planets. It was always the same. But when his ship landed in Seoul, things were different. Where are the containment facilities? He asked Ambassador Jawan. Jawan smiled. We're not using containment facilities. Thakvan's translator device made a confused noise. The protocols require secure perimeters. Controlled access points. You received the specifications. We did, Juan agreed. We decided they weren't good enough. Not good enough? Thakvan's skin changed color, which meant he was surprised. These are council-approved standards, used across the entire galactic community. Then maybe the entire galactic community has low standards, Giwan said calmly. She took Thakvan on a tour. They visited the converted university campus in Busan, where Heian's teams were finishing the last apartments. Each unit had proper beds, private bathrooms, climate controls, and windows with views of the ocean. They went to medical centers where human doctors worked. Alongside the few Talvek physicians who had survived the war, they saw schools being prepared with mixed classrooms. They toured community centers where translators and cultural liaisons were training. This is excessive, Thakvan protested. The refugees are temporary placements. They'll be relocated once the war ends. The war destroyed their planet, Gaiwan said. There's nothing to go back to. This isn't temporary. These people need permanent homes. But the cost is worth it, Guan interrupted. Every credit, every hour of work, every bit of effort, it's worth it because they're people, and people deserve better than cages. Thakvan had no response. In 200 years of refugee work, he had never seen anything like this. Earth was poor compared to most council worlds. They had fewer resources and less advanced technology. By all logic, they should do the bare minimum. Instead, they were doing everything. The refugee ships were 1 day away. 40,000 Talviks who had survived hell were coming to Earth. They expected camps and guards in the cold, efficiency of bureaucratic survival. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The ships appeared in Earth's orbit just after dawn. There were 12 of them, massive transport vessels provided by the Galactic Council. Each one carried thousands of Talvek refugees who had been traveling for 3 months through deep space inside the lead ship. A Talvek named Bora stood at the viewing port with her daughter pressed against her side. Bora had 4 arms like all Talviks, and her compound eyes could see in multiple directions at once. Right now, all she saw was the blue planet growing larger below them. Is this where we'll live in the camp? Her daughter asked. The child was small, barely 5 years old in human terms. She had been born during the war and had never known peace. I don't know, Bora answered honestly. She had seen the Council's refugee camps before. She had friends who had been sent to other worlds. They all said the same thing. The camps were safe but cold. There was food, but not enough. There were shelters, but they felt like prisons. Bora expected the same on Earth. The Council had told them this was a primitive world. Humans were barely space-capable. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were poor and technologically backward. The ships began their descent. Bora held her daughter tighter. The landing site was outside Seoul. As the ship's ramp lowered, Bora could see through the opening. She expected to see fences and guard towers. She expected soldiers with weapons and officials with clipboards. Instead, she saw people. Hundreds of humans standing behind a simple barrier rope. They were holding signs. Most of the signs had words in Talvak language, though the translation was awkward. Welcome to Earth. You are safe now. We are happy you are here. Bora didn't understand. This wasn't how refugee arrivals worked. Where were the security checkpoints? Where were the processing centers? A human man stepped forward. He was young, maybe 30 years old. He held a translation device and spoke into it. His words came out in Talvik clicking sounds. Welcome, the man said. His name tag read Yang Ho. We know you've been through terrible things. We know you're tired and scared, but you're safe now. We've prepared places for you. Real homes, not camps. You're not prisoners here. You're our neighbors." The translation spread through the crowd of refugees. Bora heard gasps and confused clicking all around her. One of the older Talviks collapsed, his legs buckling under him. Immediately, human medical workers rushed forward with stretchers and blankets. "Please, come this way," Young Ho said. "We have food and water. We have medical teams waiting. Take your time. There's no rush." Counselor Thakvon stood off to the side, watching with growing disbelief. This was all wrong. Where were the security protocols? Where was the orderly processing? The humans were just letting refugees walk freely into their city. "This is chaos," he said to Ambassador Giwan. "This is welcome," Giwan corrected. "There's a difference." Bora walked down the ramp slowly, holding her daughter's hand. A human woman approached them. She was older, with gray hair and kind eyes. She held out a blanket. "For the child," the woman said through a translator. "It's cold today." Bora took the blanket carefully, still not understanding. "Where is the camp?" she asked. The human woman looked confused. "Camp? Oh no. We're taking you to your apartment. It's about 20 minutes from here. We've prepared it based on your family's size from the ship manifest. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen, living area. Is that okay?" Bora's translator must have been malfunctioning. It sounded like the human said apartment. Like a real home. "I don't understand," Bora clicked. "The council protocols were not following those," the woman said simply. "We thought you deserved better. Come on, let's get you settled. You must be exhausted." Buses arrived to take refugees to their new homes. Not transport trucks with cages. Regular buses with comfortable seats. Bora sat with her daughter and watched through the window as Seoul passed by. The city was massive and bright and full of life. Other Talviks on the bus whispered nervously. Everyone was confused. This didn't match anything they had been told about refugee placement. The bus stopped at a residential building. It was new, freshly painted. Young Ho stood up at the front of the bus. "This building has 40 apartments," he announced. 24 Talvik families, 24 human families. You'll be living side by side. We thought it would be good to have neighbors who can help you learn about Earth, but if you prefer to live only with other Talviks, we can arrange that too. Whatever makes you comfortable." Bora was assigned to apartment 304. A human volunteer helped her carry the few possessions she had salvaged from her world. When the door opened, Bora stopped breathing. The apartment was beautiful. It had real furniture, not camp cots. The lighting was soft and in the right spectrum for Talvik eyes. The humidity felt perfect. In the smaller bedroom, there was a child's bed with toys arranged neatly on a shelf. "We weren't sure what Talvik children like to play with," the volunteer said nervously. "So we got a variety. If these aren't right, just let us know and we'll get different ones." Bora's daughter ran to the toys, making happy clicking sounds. She picked up a soft stuffed animal and hugged it to her chest. Bora felt her legs go weak. She sat down heavily on the couch. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you doing this?" The volunteer sat down across from her. "Because you need help, and we can help. It's really that simple. But we have nothing to give you. No money, no trade goods, no technology you don't already have. We're not looking for payment," the volunteer said. "We're just trying to do the right thing." That night, Bora stood on her apartment balcony looking out over Seoul. Lights stretched to the horizon. Below, she could hear music and laughter from the street. Normal city sounds. Free sounds dot in the camp. Refugees would be locked in for the night. There would be curfews and head counts and guards making sure nobody tried to leave. But here, she could walk out her door anytime she wanted. She could explore. She could live. Her daughter came up beside her, still holding the stuffed animal. "Mama, do we really get to stay here?" Bora wrapped her arms around her child. "I think we do, baby. I think we really do." Across Seoul, similar scenes played out in hundreds of apartments. 40,000 Talvik refugees discovered that Earth had rejected the Council's protocols completely. There were no camps, no fences, no guards, just homes. And people who cared enough to build them The first week was difficult for everyone. The Talviks were used to camps and restrictions. Freedom was strange and frightening after everything they had been through. Many stayed inside their apartments, afraid to venture out. They didn't believe this could be real. Dr. Youngji worked at one of the integration centers in Seoul every day. She saw Talvik families come in with the same confused and scared expressions. They asked the same questions over and over. When do we have to leave? What work are we required to do? How much will this cost us? Every time Youngji gave the same answers. You don't have to leave. You're not required to work until you're ready. There is no cost. The Talviks didn't believe her. In their experience, nothing was free. There was always a price. But slowly things began to change. A Talvik named Kira was an engineer before the war. She had designed plasma systems for industrial use. On Earth, she was afraid to mention her skills. In the camps on other worlds, educated refugees were often exploited for their knowledge and paid nothing. But her human neighbor, a woman named Minji, asked her what she used to do. Kira told her nervously. The next day, Mingi came back with contact information for 3 companies in Seoul that worked with plasma technology. They're all hiring, Mingi said. I told them about your background. They want to interview you. Kira was suspicious. Interview? Not just assign me to work? Of course interview, Minji said, confused. You get to choose where you work. And they have to offer you proper salary and benefits. That's the law here. Kira went to the interviews. The human managers asked about her experience and her ideas. They treated her like a professional, not a refugee. 2 companies offered her jobs. She accepted the position that offered the best research opportunities. Her first paycheck arrived 2 weeks later. Kira stared at the amount. It was more money than she had expected to see in a year. She went to Dr. Yunji's office with the paycheck in her hand. There's been a mistake, Kira said. They paid me too much. Yunji looked at the amount and smiled. No, that's correct. That's the standard rate for an engineer with your experience level. But I'm a refugee. I thought, you're an engineer, Yunji interrupted gently. That's what matters. Your skills, your knowledge, your potential, not where you came from. Word spread through the Talvik community. Earth wasn't just giving them shelter. They were giving them opportunities. Real opportunities. In Busan, Hyun hired a team of Talvik construction workers. They had built cities on their home world before the war. Now they helped build apartment complexes in Korea. They worked alongside human crews, sharing techniques and learning from each. Your structural support method is interesting. One Talvik worker told Hyun. It uses less material than our designs but seems stronger. It on your world, Hyun said. Maybe we can combine the methods. Make something better than either of us had before. The Talvik workers taught the humans about advanced ceramic composites. The humans taught the Talviks about earthquake-resistant design. Together, it created buildings that were stronger and more efficient than anything either species had built alone. In schools, Talvik children sat next to human children. The first few days were awkward. The children looked different and spoke different languages. But children adapt faster than adults. Teacher Sora watched as a human boy named Junho tried to explain the rules of soccer to a young Talvik girl. The Talvik girl had 4 arms, which made her very good at the game. Soon, teams were forming with mixed species. They made up new rules to keep things fair. It's 4-arm advantage. A human girl shouted, laughing. Do you have stronger legs? The Talvik girl clicked back, also laughing. Sora felt tears in her eyes. This was what integration looked like. Not force mixing or bureaucratic programs. Just children being children. The news from Earth spread through galactic networks. Other worlds watched with fascination and skepticism. The Council had sent observers to document Earth's inevitable failure. Everyone knew humans didn't have the resources for this kind of refugee program, but the failure never came. Instead, reports showed Talviks working, learning, and thriving. They showed mixed neighborhoods where humans and Talviks shared meals and celebrated each other's holidays. They showed businesses that benefited from Talvik expertise and Talviks, who benefited from Earth's opportunities. On the planet Zentara Prime, the Council's homeworld, officials watched the reports in confusion. "This is economically impossible," one economist declared. "Earth is a developing world. They can't sustain this level of support," but the economic data from Earth showed something unexpected. The integration program wasn't draining resources. It was generating them. Talvec workers filled labor shortages. Talvec engineers improved manufacturing. Talvec teachers added new perspectives to education systems. Earth wasn't just helping refugees. They were benefiting from them. More observers arrived. They wanted to understand how this was working. Counselor Thakvon had been on Earth for a month now. He spent his days visiting integration centers and interviewing both humans and Talvecs. "I don't understand your motivation," he told Ambassador Jiwan one evening. They sat in her office overlooking Seoul. Below, the city glowed with life. Somewhere down there, thousands of Talvecs were living free lives. "What's confusing about it?" Jiwan asked. "You gain nothing from this," Thakvon said. "The Talvecs have no political power. They can't offer trade agreements or technology transfers. They're just refugees. Your people are spending billions of credits to help them, and you get nothing in return." Guan was quiet for a moment. Then she pointed out the window at the city. "You see that restaurant on the corner? It's run by a Talvec named Vesh. He was a chef on his homeworld. Now he's teaching humans about Talvec cuisine while learning to make Korean food. His restaurant has a 6-month waiting list." She pointed to another building. "That laboratory is developing new medical treatments. Half the research team is Talvec. They're making discoveries that will help both our species." She turned to face Thakvon. "You say we get nothing in return. I say we get everything. We get new ideas, new perspectives, new friends, new neighbors. We get to be the kind of people who help others instead of building walls." "How is that nothing?" Thakvon had no answer. In his 200 years of refugee work, he had never considered it from that angle. That night, he sent his first report to the council. It had one sentence: "Everything we know about refugee management is wrong." 3 months after the Talvecs arrived, something unexpected happened. Other refugee groups started requesting placement on Earth. The Galactic Council was handling refugee crises from 4 different conflicts. Thousands of beings with nowhere to go. The standard procedure was to distribute them among Council worlds using the protocol system. But now, refugees were specifically asking for Earth. "They've heard stories," Counselor Thakvon explained to Ambassador Jiwan, "about how Talvecs are treated here. They want the same. We'll take them," Jiwan said immediately. "You can't," Thakvon protested. "You already have 40,000 Talvecs. Your resources must be nearly exhausted." Jiwan smiled. "You haven't been paying attention. Our resources are fine. Better than fine, actually. The integration program has created more jobs and more economic activity than we expected. We can handle more refugees." The council was skeptical, but they agreed to a test. They sent 5,000 refugees from a different species called the Methir. The Methiri were aquatic beings who needed specialized water environments to survive. Earth built them homes with water tanks and moisture systems. The coastal cities of Earth were perfect for Methir settlement. Within 2 months, Methia fishing experts were working with human fisheries to improve sustainable practices. Methir architects were designing underwater structures. Methir artists were creating sculptures that blended human and Methia aesthetics. More species followed. The Dran, who were silicon-based life forms. The Vorden, who were small and required low-gravity environments. The Helix, who communicated through color changes and needed specific lighting. Each time, Earth adapted. Communities built new types of housing. Schools developed new teaching methods. Hospitals trained in new forms of medicine. It wasn't always easy, but it worked. In New York, a neighborhood became home to 4 different refugee species, plus humans. The local market sold food from 6 different worlds. Children played games that mixed rules from multiple cultures. Festivals celebrated holidays that Earth had never heard of before. A reporter from the Zentara Prime News Network came to interview residents. She spoke to a Talvec shopkeeper named Bora, the the same Bora who had arrived on one of the first ships. "How has your life changed since coming to Earth?" the reporter asked. Bora thought carefully before answering. "On my homeworld, I had a good life. Before the war, I mean. I had a job and a home and a daughter, but I was just living, you know? Day to day, nothing special. Then the war took everything. I thought my life was over." She paused, her compound eyes reflecting the shop lights. "But here on Earth, I'm not just surviving. I'm building something new. My daughter goes to school with human children and Methier children and drawn children. She's learning about the universe in ways I never could have taught her. I have this shop now, and I sell both Talvik crafts and Earth souvenirs. I have human friends. Real friends, not just people I know," the reporter pressed. "But you lost everything. Your world is gone. How can you be happy?" "I'm not happy that my world is gone," Bora said firmly. "I'll mourn that loss until I die. But I'm happy that we ended up here. Earth gave us more than shelter. They gave us dignity. They gave us hope. They gave us a future." The interview was broadcast across the galactic network. It was viewed by billions of beings on hundreds of worlds. The response was immediate and dramatic. 12 Council member worlds announced they would attempt Earth-style integration programs. They started small, with just a few hundred refugees each. Most failed within weeks. The problem wasn't resources. These worlds were far richer than Earth. The problem was attitude. On the planet Helicos, officials built nice apartments for refugees, but kept them in a separate district. They provided jobs, but only in specific approved fields. They offered education, but in segregated schools. On paper, it looked like integration. In practice, it was just a nicer version of camps. The refugees noticed. So did the galactic media. "Earth doesn't just provide for refugees," one analyst explained. "They welcome them. There's a difference. Earth treats refugees like future citizens from day one. Other worlds treat them like permanent outsiders who happen to have nice accommodations." The council was forced to acknowledge what was happening. Earth, the youngest and poorest member of the galactic community, was leading a revolution in how refugees were handled. Ambassador Jiwan was invited to speak at the Grand Council Assembly. It was the first time a human had addressed the full gathering of all council worlds. She stood in the massive chamber, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of species. Some had been spacefaring for thousands of years. Some had technology that seemed like magic to human eyes. All of them were more advanced than Earth, and all of them were waiting to hear what she had to say. The council asked Earth to build camps. G1 began. Her voice was calm but strong. "You sent us detailed specifications. Fences, guard towers, minimum survival standards. You gave us the bare minimum." She paused, looking around the chamber. "We rejected it. Not because we're reckless or stupid. We rejected it because we know something important. When you treat people like problems that need to be contained, they stay problems. When you treat them like people with potential, they become solutions." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some sounded approving. Others sounded skeptical. "Earth isn't special," Guan continued. "We don't have superior technology or unlimited resources. What we have is memory. We remember what it's like to be refugees. Throughout our history, humans have fled from wars and disasters and persecution. We've been the ones behind fences. We've been the ones in camps. We know how that feels." She stepped forward, her voice growing stronger. "And we decided we never wanted to make anyone else feel that way. So when the Talviks came, we didn't build camps. We built communities. We didn't create containment zones. We created neighborhoods. We didn't offer the bare minimum. We offered the best we could give." Chamber was silent now. Everyone was listening. "You call them refugees," Juwan said. "We call them neighbors. You see them as temporary problems. We see them as permanent potential. That's the only difference. That's the only thing that matters." She looked directly at the council leadership. "Your protocols are designed to contain and control. Ours are designed to welcome and include. You've been doing this for thousands of years, but you've been doing it wrong. And Earth, the youngest world here, had to show you how." Counselor Thakvon stood up. His bioluminescent skin pulsed with emotion. The Council recognizes Earth's achievements. We acknowledge that their methods have succeeded beyond all projections. We have much to learn. Other counselors stood one by one in their species-specific ways of showing respect. The chamber filled with sounds of acknowledgement from dozens of different species. Earth had changed the galaxy's mind about refugees, and in doing so, they had changed what it meant to be civilized. 1 year after the first Talvek ships arrived, Earth looked different. Not physically, but in the ways that mattered most. In Seoul, Bora's daughter attended 4th grade at a mixed-species school. Her best friend was a human girl named Yuna. They did homework together and shared lunches and argued about which music was better. Normal kid stuff. Bora's shop had expanded. She now employed 3 people: a human teenager who needed part-time work, a Mether artist who created beautiful water sculptures, and another Talvek refugee who had arrived in the second wave. Together, they created a strange and wonderful mix of products that sold better than Bora had ever imagined. "I'm opening a second location," Bora told Dr. Yoonji during one of their regular check-ins. "In Busan, Hayan offered me a great lease in one of his new buildings." Hayanji smiled. "That's wonderful. How are you feeling about everything?" "Honestly, sometimes I still can't believe this is real. I wake up and expect to find myself back in a camp somewhere. But then my daughter comes in asking for breakfast, and I remember, this is real. This is home now." Across Earth, similar stories played out thousands of times. The Talvek engineer Kira had been promoted to lead researcher at her company. The construction workers in Busan had started their own firm, building structures that combine the best of human and Talvek design. Teachers, doctors, artists, laborers, all of them finding places where they belonged. The other refugee species followed the same pattern. Methia fisheries were revolutionizing ocean management. Drawn engineers were developing new forms of construction materials. Vorten programmers were creating software that thought in ways human programmers never had. Helix therapists were helping humans understand emotion in new ways. Integration wasn't just helping the refugees. It was making Earth better. But success brought new challenges. More refugees wanted to come to Earth. The Council had refugee populations from a dozen different conflicts, and all of them requested placement on Earth specifically. "Can't take everyone," Juan said during a United Nations meeting. "We don't have infinite resources. Then what do we do?" asked the Secretary General. "Turn them away." "No," Guan said firmly. "We teach others how to do what we do. We share our methods. We prove it's not special Earth magic hits, just treating people with dignity." Earth started a new program. They invited officials from other Council worlds to come and see the integration centers. They shared their protocols and methods. They offered training for anyone who wanted to learn. Some worlds were eager students. Others remained skeptical. But slowly, change began to happen across the galaxy. The planet Vornok tried a small integration program with 200 refugees. They followed Earth's methods exactly. Within 3 months, those refugees were working, learning, and contributing to Vornok society. The success led to a larger program. The Helikos government, embarrassed by their earlier failure, completely redesigned their refugee policies. They tore down the segregated districts and built integrated neighborhoods. They opened all jobs and schools to refugees. It was messy and difficult, but it worked. More worlds followed. The change was slow, but it was real. At the Grand Council Assembly, a historic vote took place. The Refugee Protocol Handbook, unchanged for 3,000 years, was officially revised. The new version was called the Earth Integration Model. It replaced containment with community building. It replaced minimum survival standards with comprehensive support systems. It replaced temporary placement with permanent welcome. The vote was nearly unanimous. Only a few conservative worlds voted against it, and even they admitted the old ways weren't working. Counselor Thakvon retired from his position as Refugee Commissioner. He was 230 years old and had seen enough. Before he left, he visited Earth one last time. He met with Bora at her shop in Seoul. They sat together drinking tea, a habit Thakvon had picked up during his time on Earth. When I first came here, I thought you humans were naive, Thakvon said. I thought you didn't understand how refugee management works. I was wrong. You understood perfectly. You just chose to do better. Bora clicked softly, the Talvek equivalent of a gentle laugh. We're not perfect. Earth has problems, but we try. That's something, isn't it? It's everything, Thakvon said. Your people showed the galaxy that compassion isn't weakness. That welcoming strangers doesn't mean sacrificing security. That treating refugees like people instead of problems actually works better for everyone. He stood to leave, his old joints making small creaking sounds. Thank you, Bora, for being part of this. For showing us what we were missing. Thank you for bringing us here, Bora replied. Even if you didn't plan it this way. 5 years after the first arrival, Earth had welcomed over 200,000 refugees from 15 different species. The economic impact was overwhelmingly positive. The cultural impact was immeasurable. Earth's cities were louder, more colorful, more diverse than ever before. In classrooms, human children learned languages that didn't use sound. In hospitals, doctors treated patients with biochemistry unlike anything Earth had evolved. In laboratories, scientists from 6 different worlds collaborated on projects no single species could have imagined alone. Earth hadn't just helped refugees. They had enriched themselves in ways they never expected. Ambassador Jawan, much older, gave one final speech to the United Nations. She stood in the same building where she had first read the Council's message about the Talvek refugees. 5 years ago, we had a choice, she said. We could follow the galaxy's example and build camps. We could do the minimum required and call it enough. But we chose differently. We chose to build homes instead of fences. We chose to see potential instead of problems. We chose to be better than the example we were given. She looked out at the assembly, at representatives from every nation on Earth and every species that had made Earth their home. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. We have challenges. But we proved something important. We've proved that treating people with dignity isn't just morally right, it's practically smart. We proved that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. We proved that the newest member of the galactic community could teach the oldest members something they had forgotten. She paused, her voice growing softer, but more intense. We proved that humanity deserves its name. Not because we're human, but because we're humane. And we invited others to join us in that humanity, whatever their species. Assembly erupted in applause. Not just the human delegates, but the Talvek representatives, the Mathir observers, the Drawn counselors. All of them recognizing what Earth had accomplished. That night, Bora stood on her apartment balcony one more time. Her daughter, now 10 years old, stood beside her. Below them, Sol glowed with life. Music drifted up from a street festival celebrating some holiday Bora still didn't fully understand. She could hear multiple languages mixing together: Korean, Talvik, Mathir, Droan, and others. Mama, her daughter said, "Do you ever miss our old home?" Bora wrapped her arms around her child. "Every day, baby. I miss it every single day. But I'm grateful we ended up here. Earth gave us something our old world never could." What's that? A second chance, and friends who cared enough to make it real. Far above, in orbit, new refugee ships were arriving. More people fleeing from new conflicts, looking for safety and hope. They would land tomorrow, and they would find what the Talviks had found. Not camps or fences or cold efficiency. They would find welcome. They would find home. They would find humanity at its best. And Earth would continue to prove that the measure of civilization isn't technology or power or wealth. It's how you treat those who have nothing. It's what you do when you have the choice between fences and bridges. Earth had chosen bridges. And in doing so, they had built a better galaxy for everyone.